Okay guys, so on today's video, I noticed I had a little bit of an issue on my Civic's taillights. So let's take a look. I was just about to wash it until I realized, what the heck is this? Yeah, that was a lot of water. Not really sure how it got in there. I'm guessing the seal around there probably wore out. I think there's like supposed to be glue inside that black plastic that joins the black and the red, and I think it might have just worn out. So I'm gonna go ahead and just apply some sealant on there and throw it back in there. So these are some junkyard taillights, which I picked up a few weeks back, and after the rainy season came in here in California, I noticed that I was getting some water in them. And even though I'm pretty lazy about some of the issues on the hatchback, I can't let this one slide, because if I blow a taillight without like knowing that it's blown, I can get pulled over or cause some major issues, which, you know, as you guys know, I hate electrical stuff. So I'm gonna go ahead and try to fix this before I cause any more problems. Once I removed the housing so I can actually examine this properly, I would like to mention, oh shit. It's a good idea to also examine your, seals here. These are the rubber seals for the trunk area, and I got these off a Resto Tuner a few weeks back after actually a few months back after I managed to fix another leak that I had in the Civic here, and you can check out that video later on here, up here somewhere. All right, I got a leak somewhere. Look at that. Oh, this thing is just full of water. This isn't even a little bit of water. It's like a whole bottle of water just dumped down here. Anyway, Resto Tuner, check them out. They got a cool bunch of aftermarket parts like stickers, bolts, pretty much all kinds of stuff. Anyway, back to the video. So once I removed the housing, I basically suspected that the red housing here was losing contact with the black housing at the bottom, right? Basically the adhesive around the edges here was wearing out and letting water in here. At least that's what I thought. So I headed over to AutoZone and I picked up some RTV sealant to go ahead and fix any of the gaps that might be wearing out. I had no idea basically what I was looking for, so I ended up going with something clear and waterproof. Okay, let's see if this holds up. I'm not really sure where the leaking is, but there is a ton of it in here. It should be dry by now, at least somewhat. So let's go ahead and seal this thing up. I was gonna use this, but then I found out that the crack that's in there, right, it's pretty wide, and you'll be able to see from this side, this black weather strip adhesive, and I don't want that. Now my taillights here have a pretty big gap between the red housing and the black housing. And as you can see here, when I add the sealant, I didn't really add enough to close up that gap because that wasn't my goal. The main reason why I didn't really focus on sealing up the gap between the housing and the red and the black housing was because I just wanted to seal up where the adhesive was. So I actually had to get the sealant in there and then spread it out. And I guess you could just seal up the entire gap, but I was trying to spare some of the sealant because I didn't know how many other taillights I might have to do. And I only started with one to see if I could actually get it to stop leaking. And I have a couple other leaks in the Civic, mind you, so just keep that in mind moving forward. Another reason why I didn't seal up the entire gap is just because it's kind of hard to get into the gap because of the tip here. But I did my best to try to get a bead of sealant as close to the bottom of that gap as possible. But with this giant tip here and the tiny little gap that you're working with, it's kind of hard. Now, once I finished up, I went ahead and installed it back into the Civic to test it out. Hopefully it don't rain. The seal looks like it's going all the way around properly. However, I don't know if this is the source of the leaking. So we're gonna throw it in and see if it leaks again. Now I did wait a few hours for the sealant obviously to dry, but once I threw it in there, I basically backed the Civic out and drowned the lights in water to check for any more leaks. And a few months back, I actually noticed my corner lights were also holding water. So that's where the rest of the sealant would come in handy. But I never really got around to buying new ones just because the ones in my Civic are not that old and they should last longer. So I figured I could actually fix this without having to buy new ones. Now, after I had drowned all the lights basically with water to try to see if I had any leaks, I just went ahead and washed the Civic because I was already out there. I might as well wash it. And after that, I basically confirmed that the only other leak were in my corner lights here. Well, sort of. I'll get into that later. So basically, once I had washed the Civic and then dried it and then put it back in my garage, I basically just inspected the corner lights here. And as you can see, they definitely still have some liquid in there. You can see the soap in here and it's not very pretty to look at and pretty obvious that it's definitely got a leak. So once I confirmed that, I went ahead and just took the taillights out, inspected them to see where any of the possible issues might be, and it's basically the same issue. Basically, the gap between the housing and the orange amber housing here is basically just wearing out because the adhesive is losing its adhesive properties. Now, after learning from sealing this one, I basically just repeated the same steps for the corner lights. And once I had cleaned them up and prepped them, got rid of any dirt and water and made sure they were nice and dry, I started to apply the sealant here. Now, I should mention this process isn't exactly foolproof, especially for a novice like me. I had never done this before, and like I mentioned, applying the sealant is kind of hard to get into the right spot just because of the tip being used here. It's kind of too big for the gap that I'm trying to seal, and it doesn't exactly get the sealant in the right area. So it's a little hard to get it in there, but that's what she said. Stupid. Anyway, like I said, the sealant is kind of hard to get into the right spot, but I went ahead and just solved that issue by using a plastic wrapper from a part that I had bought. Basically just any kind of wrapping that could kind of like fold itself into the gap and disperse the sealant properly. Like I said, it's not exactly ideal because of the tip won't fit in there all the way, but I used some of the plastic wrapping to try and disperse the sealant as best as possible so I can get it to stick to both the black housing and the other housing for the corner light over there. But I won't know until I try it out with some water if I actually did it right. But seeing as I've never done this before, it's basically a trial and error process. And once I got the hang of sealing one of the corner lights, I went ahead and did the other one. Okay, so even after I had finished installing the RTV silicone here, I noticed that after I took it out to water it to make sure I had no more leaks. So this is after the sealant. I couldn't see any water, but after a few days, I saw some evaporation in the clear housing here, which meant I still had a leak. So I took it out, examined it by moving it around to make sure I could see where the water was coming in by finding out where the water was coming out. So after I found the leak, which is in this corner here, I just applied more silicone and now we're ready to go ahead and install it back in there and test it once again. After I finished installing the taillight here, which is not that easy to access, I gotta be honest, it's a little annoying just because I have to remove some of the screws on the trim, but after I finished installing it, I went ahead and just took it back out and tested it. Now I get to show you guys my custom trunk here. Man, gotta love it. Check it out, full-size spare tire. No more little spare donk that doesn't even work, but a full spare tire. I got another video for how to make this if you guys are interested. Now, once I took it out, I made sure to spray each and every housing. After I sprayed it, I actually examined it to make sure I didn't get any water in them, and it looks pretty good, to be honest. Water will be swashing back and forth, at least at the bottom here, but I don't see anything. So that's a good sign. I wish I could say this one's good too. However, like I said, only a few hours after I had wet it with the evaporation come out. So this was already here. I can't clean it. This part is sealed. I can't get in there to actually clean this evaporation, but the rest, only time will tell. But for now, it looks like there's no water in there. Like I said, this is the only one that matters. The corner lights, I don't really care all that much about them because I can see when those go out. But this one, I really won't be checking too much. So hopefully I don't have any more leaks. Like I said, I sprayed it with water, but only time will tell because I can't really see if there's any water in this red portion. And that's usually where it would collect. So I'm gonna let it dry. Well, I'm gonna clean it up a little bit because after spraying all that water, I got water spots everywhere. So we'll go ahead and clean that up and we'll check back in a few hours. I basically got to go through a couple of cycles of rain, water, and make sure that nothing actually gets in there, right? Driving it around is a little different than actually just spraying it with water. But for now, it looks like it actually held up. So I don't see any evaporation after 24 hours after checking all these housings again. It looks pretty good. So there you have it, guys. That little tube of RTV silicone actually held up. And I was actually a little surprised. I thought that it might not work just because I'd never used RTV silicone for this type of thing, but it does definitely hold up. A little tip though, you might want to probably get the same amount all the way through. As you can see here, I added more here, less there, a lot more there, and yeah, you over here, you can definitely see it doesn't look exactly uniform. But that's not what we're going for. I'm just trying to fix it from getting any water in there, so I don't really care how it looks, especially because, you know, it's a Honda. Anyway, that's going to be it for this video, guys. So take care and good speed.